gamers. Today, we're going to be talking about Holy Roman Empire right here. So, it's been a while since I recorded one of these, so the games that you probably saw were maybe a tiny bit like, you know, a couple of weeks ago kind of thing. But HRE has been one of my favorite civs, if not favorite civ, for a very, very, very long time. I still play it. Sadly, pretty much nobody plays it in tournaments. Nobody really bothers with it. You don't really see it on the ladder either too much at the top, tippity top level, and when you do, it's a destruction. But in the most recent tournament, I picked HRE, I think, 4 times out of 5 matches, and I think I went 4-0 with them. I love HRE. I think if you get going and if you know, get your economy up, get a relic or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5, you know, it's pretty good. I would say at least 2 relics. Anything more than 2 is like, you know, advantage, I would say. Once you get going, and especially if you get to Imperial, I feel like HRE is super, super strong. It's one of the strongest civs in Imperial because with Chapel, you have infinite amount of food. But getting to that point is the problem. So what is the good stuff, the bad stuff about HRE, and where do they place in the meta right now? In Imperial, like I just said, they're probably one of the best civs, especially if you got relics. You just got infinite gold. You don't even need a lot of traders. It's amazing. I love it. If you lose workers, you just Sabia, spam them back. Your men-at-arms are great. So as far as that goes, great. You know, you have cheaper emplacements on towers, which is also really good. You have emergency repairs, which in Imperial, you know, having emergency repairs on like a keep in the middle of the map or something is really good because you're actually saving a lot of stone. So that's all good, but that's not where the problem lies. If you get to Castle with HRE, I would say without taking damage or, you know, able to gather resources, I think HRE is still pretty good. You unlock basically a lot of strong stuff for the civ. You unlock, you know, producing prelates out of monasteries. You unlock inspired warriors. You can heal your units. You can get the relics. You can like empower your towers. Like even in Castle, if you get like a Springle tower and you put a relic inside, it's so strong and it's so hard to take down as the opponent. And then you obviously have the men-at-arms with maces and that other upgrades, the swords upgrade, I think. I don't know what it is, which is all good. You got marching drills by then. So I think that HRE in Castle is still pretty good. But obviously, it is a very melee unit-focused civilization. Those are the good things about HRE, and those are the strengths of HRE. So the opponent kind of needs to stop you from taking relics, or the game can snowball. And another great thing, actually, about HRE, that HRE is viable on hybrid maps. It might be a little counterintuitive, because usually on hybrid maps, you play aggressive civs like Ottoman or Mongol, or, you know, some civs that can make units in Dark Age. But HRE is actually also one of the best civs for that, because even though their spearmen are just spearmen, your prelate boosts your economy quite a bit in Dark Age, so you can actually overwhelm your opponent with spearmen in Dark Age. So, you know, pretty good civ on hybrid maps. The ones where there's like water between you and your opponent, you gotta fight over it. But it's also very good for water maps, one of the best civs for water maps, which most of the time it is used in tournaments. Maps like Mediterranean, maps like Boulder Bay, Four Lakes, HRE is great, and at the pro level, that's where you usually see Holy Roman Empire. You don't really see it on Dry Arabia too much, or, you know, Cliffside and stuff like that. Now, the reason for that is, coming to the bad stuff, is because of their feudal age. So, what is the problem with their feudal age? Any civ that struggles in feudal age, such as Abbasid or, you know, Japanese or Holy Roman Empire. The reason for that is they have something in common, and that something in common, and Ayyubids as well, I guess. That something is in common is that they don't have a strong upgrade or a strong unit to carry them through. So for example, French, JD, Rus, Mongol, they have Keshiks, they have Knights, that's their strong unit, and even if your opponent ages up to Castle, you can still fight Castle units with your Knights that are from feudal. You're not going to trade 1 for 1, but you can overwhelm them. Then you have China and Jushi Legacy, for example, where if your opponent ages, you're fighting, and your opponent ages up to Castle, it's not the end of the world, because Zugunu can actually kill men-at-arms or knights from Castle Age because of the way they work. You know, Delhi has Ghazi Raiders, the English has longbows that deal extra damage, Malian has Musafari warriors. So every civilization has something, and HRE does not. They have men-at-arms, which are very mediocre in feudal age. They're not that strong. And if you're playing against like castle knights or castle men-at-arms, your feudal men-at-arms are not gonna do too well. The one thing that you do have as HRE compared to the other civs is the upgrade in blacksmith marching drills that increases your movement speed, which is pretty cool, and your economy is very boosted up in feudal age because of the chapel. You know, usually early chapel, you got a lot of trees, maybe berries, maybe gold under it, so you can kind of pump out a lot of units. But the longer the feudal goes, you reach a point where it's like, okay, you have 30 spearmen and 30 archers, but then the opponent has like 20 knights and 40 archers or something. Or, you know, maybe a bit less. I don't know the exact numbers. And then it's like, if you lose your spearmen, the game's over. But because your army is mostly infantry, you can't really compete as much as the other opponents. Another problem is, if you're playing against civs like Delhi or like Ottoman, you know, you have movement speed, but their units got 20% attack speed. So obviously in a straight up fight, if they just stand there and attack you, your movement speed is not going to do much. You're going to get mowed down by, you know, just attack speed. So that's kind of the issues with HRE. And the main reason why we don't see it at the tippity top level on open maps, it's because it cannot hold on its own in feudal age in prolonged fights. Now, sometimes with HRE, you can rush castle and you can be fine. You kind of, I always said this, you want to get away from feudal, but it's very map dependent, right? So, I mean, I'll start the game now just to give you guys an example. Sometimes your spawn is good and you can kind of progress to castle and you have that time to do so, and you can kind of secure your resources pretty quickly. But there's so many things attached to castle rushing with HRE that it makes it very risky to play on open maps. So, for example, if I go around the map now and I find 4 sheep or 5 sheep at the top level and I'm playing against, you know, Jeanne d'Arc or Delhi or something, I'm probably just auto dead. Like, you can make the argument you can transition to farms early, but if you do that, you're not going to have any units and you're just going to get overwhelmed. On the other side, if I get like 13 sheep, suddenly I'm going to have food for a very long time, so the only thing I need to protect is my gold, and then I'm chilling, right? So because of this, HRE is very dependent on how your map spawned and how many sheep you find. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm playing against this civ, I'm going to fight them in feudal, but then I find like 12, 13 sheep on a map where there's like 20 sheep total, and I'm like, I'm just going to rush castle, right? I have enough food to make it there. So for example, this spawn is pretty decent, not amazing, right? You would rather want a chapel in the back. So you would want a chapel like usually in the back, so maybe you can chapel even like here or something, or here, whatever. The problem is your wood line is forward, so you're not going to be able to get wood, but you don't want a chapel here because that's too open. You usually want to get a spawn where it's like, if this wood line was the close one, that's a really good spawn, right? And this one is further, that's a really, really good spawn, because then if your wood line is here, you have your gold, you can chapel here, you get everything under chapel, and obviously with this kind of spawn, HRE, you know, instead of being at 100% good, it's like 120%. But then if I play another game and my gold is like here or here, it's like that's really bad. That's like 70%, you know, of strength, because it becomes a lot harder to defend and all that. And that's kind of the main reason you don't see HRE at the top level on open maps, because it's just very RNG dependent, where you spawn, how many sheep you find. And if you don't get a good spawn / don't find enough sheep, you are forced to either go farms and then have a delayed castle rush, which is not that good, or you can stay in feudal and fight, which is also not that good, because you're playing, you know, most of the time on Dry Arabia, you're going to play against civs that are very aggressive in feudal and very good in feudal. So you're just going to lose that game in the long run, because they're going to take the map control, they're going to get all the food, and then you're slowly going to kind of bleed out. So what needs to happen for HRE buff, nerfed, whatever? I personally think that HRE chapel should probably receive a nerf to like 30%. but I would love to see some kind of military buff early on. I don't, you know, that can be a lot of things. I do think that Chapel in Imperial is way too strong, because you could put like 40 farms under a Chapel and your food income is just batshit insane. And if HRE reaches that point, it's like just never-ending stream of units. Like, you can fight with Spearmen against whatever units and you're going to win, because you're just never-ending amount of units are coming out. But then I would rather sacrifice some of that strength later on for something early on. You know, Chapel is good early on for like first 8 to 10 minutes until your resources are within Chapel range. But once that's gone, that weakens quite a bit. So I'm not sure what you could add to them. To be fair, I think one of the things they could make is potentially nerf Chapel, but give maybe Minework something, or make marching drills do something else. I don't know. One of the things they could do is put eco upgrades on the Chapel, which will make it a bit better. You know, instead of having to make a mill, now you can just upgrade your eco stuff in the Chapel. I don't know, but that's kind of what needs to happen, I think, for HRE to have a chance in Feudal Age. But once you're out of that, it's great, you know? Or even if you can, like, stay in Feudal, if you get to a point where you have all your upgrades, marching drills, and you have, like, pure men-at-arm and archer, that's a really good comp. But to get to that point where you have, like, 30 Feudal men-at-arms and 30 archers, the amount of resources that you need for that and the amount of time that you need to get there, it's very hard to survive against like knights, against longbows, against whatever else. Like, if you can get to that point where you're just like pumping units in Feudal, HRE is not bad, but it's kind of build up to that point that usually doesn't work out, because you cannot really go out on the map like other civs can. Other than that, in the current meta, I think that HRE, you know, is still on the maps that it's good. It's very good. It's a little bit like Mongols, where, you know, on maps like Prairie, I think HRE is one of the best civs. Boulder Bay, Mediterranean, HRE is amazing. Altai, HRE is amazing. African Waters, I haven't played HRE, but I'm assuming it's pretty decent. Archipelago, if you want to count that in, HRE is great. Canal, HRE is okay. Continental, Danube, HRE is great. Four Lakes. So every map, Golden Heights, every map that has hybrid or just full water kind of map is great. Or the maps where you can kind of camp a little bit and rush castle. So for example, any map that has deer spawning next to your town center, HRE is also great, because castle rushing is very food dependent, what I mentioned earlier. So on maps like Altai or Hill and Dale, because you start with deer around your TC, you don't depend on finding sheep in order to get to castle, right? So HRE is also good on those maps. So HRE does have plenty of good maps, just the more standard maps are not that great for the civ because of the reasons I mentioned earlier. Mountain Clearing, funnily enough, is also a great HRE map. Mongolian Heights is a great HRE map. But then on maps, you know, such as like the Pit or Lipany or Himeyama, Highview, Gorge, Hidden Valley, Golden Pit, Forts Dry Arabia, I don't think HRE is good at all. And I would probably be pretty worried picking it. So if you're playing HRE on ladder, that doesn't mean that you cannot win on Dry Arabia or that it's impossible to win, but those are the weaker maps. So if I was playing HRE, I would probably be... I haven't played HRE on Fort, so I will say that. I haven't played HRE on Fort, so I'm not sure how good it is. But I would probably veto these three civs if I was an HRE main, if you want to go purely from what are the best maps for me. I think Golden Pit is not that bad for Holy Roman Empire, because your resources are usually closer to your town center, and usually there's like a deer pack or boar even somewhat close to your TC, so you can go for those. But it's kind of my honest opinion about Holy Roman Empire. But I do think HRE is still a great civ. I think it's a lot of fun. Like I said, it's one of my favorite civs. I think I have the most played games on the ladder with HRE. So thumbs up. If you need more HRE help, check out my games on Twitch. And that's it. If you're watching on YouTube, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Check me out on Twitch right now. If you're watching on Twitch, let's keep going.